What if Lane Kiffin keeps kicking the can down the road and not making a decision? Will it cost Ole Miss?
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I am your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former staff member at Ole Miss. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in America. That is all thanks to you. On today's show, we'll break down the biggest SEC showdowns of Rivalry Week and give our leans and locks, courtesy of FanDuel, as we dive into the best weekend of college football all year. Next, we'll unpack the growing college football playoff conspiracy theory surrounding Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, because fans with long memories and plenty of scar tissue can feel something brewing even when nothing concrete has happened yet. But first, let's talk about the decision that is expected on Saturday, what it means if it arrives on time, and what if it means, more importantly, if it doesn't, and why the uncertainty around that has many people on the edge. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Pretty cool stuff there. If you're heading down to Starkville, you can get tickets from Game Time. It's going to be a really fun, really big atmosphere for Ole Miss. All right. So everybody saw the release from Keith Carter on Friday where they expected an answer by Saturday. And the word expected has been a word that everybody has been overly trying to define during this whole process. I think that Ole Miss just expects to hear by then. But it's not like, hey, if something happens, we'll do it. But that expected word has people on edge, especially high-powered boosters. They don't know exactly what's going on. Nobody on the Ole Miss side potentially knows what Lane Kiffin is going to do. My opinion is that I think he's going to go to LSU, but all the people of Florida are really excited as well. LSU and Florida are basically in a hype off right now, and Ole Miss is just kind of sitting back going, what's going on here? But what if that decision doesn't come? What if nothing happens on Saturday? What if Lane Kiffin just kicks the can down the road? That, in my opinion, would be the worst case scenario for Ole Miss. If you look at the quality coaching candidates out there, which there are not a lot of, by the way, it's a game of musical chairs that is not in your favor if you get into this competition. If that happens and you kick the can down the road, like many are expecting could possibly happen, it could cost you the John Sumrall sweepstakes. He ends up at Auburn. Somebody that ideally Auburn's panicking right now about Ole Miss getting into the race for John Sumrall. It could cost you any number of coaching carousel candidates where other schools have the head start on what's going on. It could be something similar to when Johnny Vaught, way back in the day, had to retire because he had a heart attack, and they hired Billy Kennard, and you know what happened for the next 40 years with Ole Miss football. This is a pretty serious moment, in my opinion, of where this handles. Now, I expect Walker Jones, I expect Keith Carter, I expect Dr. Glenn Boyce to be well on top of everything when it comes to this. And I do not think that Ole Miss is going to get played, but it does need to be known that Lane Kiffin most wants to coach this playoff game more than anything. He has been trying to have his cake and eat it too throughout this whole process. And we have been talking how the timeline is not on his side. That has been the whole thing. It's like, well, if he coaches the playoff, he's going to 100% coach Ole Miss. And that is because we didn't expect what went down to go down, to where Florida and LSU are such high priorities, to the point where it felt like, and I've said this before, it felt like he was going to Tommy Tuberville us on steroids and let us know 3 or 4 days before the college football playoff that he was skedaddling to LSU or Florida, and then use that game as a 4-hour recruiting commercial for whoever he is going to go to. I think that might be still the goal, because what we have is somebody intent on coaching that college football playoff game. And if he can make the timeline work against Ole Miss, that puts the pressure on them. Remember, Dr. Boyce, Keith Carter, Walker Jones, all those guys are having strategy meetings of what they need to do. And giving that release on Friday, the one thing that it allowed them to do is to start the coaching search early, so they could get in as quickly as humanly possible. But Keith Carter, he knows only what Lane is telling him. And we don't know if Lane is telling the truth or lying or whatever's going on right now. We know that Matt Moscona of Locked On LSU gave it somewhere above 90% confidence level that he was going to go to LSU. We know that everybody at Florida is telling everybody that will listen that Lane Kiffin's going to Florida. We also know that he is telling everybody at Ole Miss he just doesn't know, and he's torn. If you look at those actions of everything, he's not going to end up staying at Ole Miss. So it comes down to the point he wants to coach the playoffs at all costs and will say absolutely everything to make that happen. Period. He just will. If you just look at the timeline and everything that's gone on, that is probably true. If you go into it knowing that, you can take steps to prevent it from happening. Now, on Saturday, he could come out and say, yes, I'm going to LSU, and move on, skedaddle, all of that stuff, a nice clean break. He goes to start his new career with the Bayou Bengals or the Swamp Gators or all of those people. And Ole Miss can go hire the next coach and continue building with the Grove Collective that they have. The problem that I am concerned with is that Ole Miss is getting played because they are hoping that he sticks around, that there's a little bit of a case of hopium of what's going on, because Ole Miss, 4 10-win seasons in the last 5 years, that's nothing to sneeze at. The coaching level that Lane Kiffin has given Ole Miss is at a high level, and make no mistake of this, Ole Miss went into this with their eyes open, with exactly who they were hiring. What's going on right now? Not surprising, not ideal. But if Lane Kiffin skedaddles to Florida or LSU, Ole Miss won by getting to the college football playoff. Now, they have to beat Mississippi State probably on Friday for that to happen. But if Ole Miss makes it to the college football playoff, this has all been worth it. But it is on Ole Miss to protect itself against somebody that might have nefarious ideals of what could happen down the road. You cannot, under any circumstance, let LSU's coach your team in the college football playoff. It's bad enough that in the Egg Bowl that you have LSU's potential coach coaching the biggest game in the regular season in potentially Ole Miss history against Mississippi State. That's bad enough. You cannot take it a step further, which means an answer has to happen Saturday. And if it doesn't, at that point, the clock starts ticking on those guys, because lots of people have their antennas up about Lane Kiffin playing them right now. He's telling everybody yes at the moment. Everybody at Florida is absolutely sure he's coming. Everybody at LSU is absolutely sure he's coming. And they just go back and forth with doubt and all of that, just going height back and forth. The only place that's not happening right now is with Ole Miss, because he spent the better part of the last 3 weeks kind of pissing on Ole Miss. So we will see exactly what that looks like. Now, the biggest rumor that is going around right now is that the college football playoff committee would actually screw Ole Miss, because Lane Kiffin, if he leaves, that could be a bad thing and detrimental to Ole Miss's playoff hopes. We will talk all about that coming up next. You know, the holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seatings for guests, cozy new linens, a fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. I recently upgraded my recliner for my brain surgery recovery from Wayfair, and it completely transformed my living room. I even sleep on it from time to time right now. It's amazing. I couldn't believe how fast it shipped. It got here just in time for my surgery. So if you order something right now, it will come in time for the holidays. And if you ever hosted a family for the holidays, you know how much of a difference a few new touches can make. Wayfair makes all of that easy. So don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. The sale ends December 7th. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcatcher you're listening to this on, and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it helps keep all of this free. Locked On is getting ready to change the game yet again, all in the name of having fun following your team. It's coming in December. Stand by. More details as we have it. And thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America. That is all because of you. Thank you very much for that. All right. The big rumor that is going around the fan base right now, and honestly it should, because it actually is a bylaw and it's talking about seating selection and all of that stuff with the college football playoff, and that is coach availability. The reason that this is a storyline is that On3 released it first, quoting a former college football playoff committee member, and it's also the mouthpiece of one Lane Kiffin. Anytime something needs to get released, it's always On3 that does it. So you can expect that it would be that way here as well. So the college football player punishing Ole Miss because Lane Kiffin chose to take another job. Ole Miss is ranked 6th in the college football playoff round right now. They could be as high as 7th in the next voting. But I have a hard time believing that a group of athletic directors would allow a coach to do this to the student athletes. I think there's a little bit of an empathy that will happen amongst the people of the committee to where Ole Miss won't even drop a spot, essentially. They're going to be exactly where they are. If they win, they're going to host a playoff game. If they lose, they're going to be traveling to a playoff game. I think that is the situation that Ole Miss faces itself right now. But if you look at the rumors that are going around the fan base, and believe me, I understand the scar tissue that fans have and people being out to get Ole Miss, because it is a real thing. It is a real thing that the whatever committee or whatever governing body out there, they love taking down Ole Miss whenever they can for whatever reason. They're concerned if Ole Miss loses to Mississippi State, they will not make the college football playoff, and this will be used as the justification to allow that to happen. That is going around. And they think even if they beat Mississippi State, this will be used as justification that Ole Miss doesn't get the home playoff game that they so richly deserve, that they're going to send them on the road. That is basically the rumor of what's going on right now. And I don't think that is going to happen. In fact, I don't think that Ole Miss can be out of the playoffs, period. I think that teams are going to lose, including teams that are 2-loss teams that you're concerned about, over the course of the weekend. All you have to do, if you take care of business, you're going to end up finishing 5th or 6th. Preferably 6th or 7th is where you want to be, by the way. 6th or 7th means that you are going to avoid likely Ohio State and Georgia. And those are two poor matchups for Ole Miss. So you would like to see them one time in the national championship game on the other side of the bracket. You much rather would like if Texas A&M and Indiana were the bye teams on your side of the bracket, and the number 6 or the number 7 would provide that. Now, ideally, you would want the number 6 because technically that means you could have a number 20 team or something like that coming to your place for the first round of the playoffs. But number 7, I would be okay with that as well. Now, I don't think this is a scenario that will happen. This is more about the scar tissue that's related to the Ole Miss fan base than anything real that could happen. This is one of those things that you read it and you're like, yes, this will be the next thing that they get us with. It is kind of a muscle memory, Pavlov's dog type response when stuff like this happens because you know it's coming. But I do not think a group of athletic directors would punish student athletes because of the actions of an adult. I just don't. And I should use adult in quotes. So if it all goes down, I imagine that Ole Miss will end up about where they are right now. They wouldn't drop down if they won against Mississippi State, and they would be in the playoff potentially if they lost to Mississippi State, because you'd be losing to a bowl team at that point, by the way. Both of your losses would be against the bowl teams. It's a much better resume than what they had a year ago when Kentucky and Florida were just bombs on the resume. This is a solid resume where you lose to number 4 and you lose to a bowl team, your rivalry in the game. I think Ole Miss will drop from 6 to 10 or something like that, but ultimately they would be fine. It would probably cost them a home playoff game, but it wouldn't cost them the playoffs. This is what we are discussing instead of discussing how good this team is. Instead of discussing how good Trinidad Chambliss is having of a year, how good Keon Lacy is, Cam Franklin, Santarum Perkins, TJ Daugherty. Instead of talking about them like we should be, we're sitting here worried about this, which you're going to hear all these people talk about. Well, the timeline is the whole problem. You got to fix the timeline. You heard Nick Saban over the course of College Game Day saying you've got to fix the timeline. No. It's pretty simple what's going on. When a team's season is over and they fire a coach and they have nothing else left to do, they're okay with ruining somebody else's season to try and get their coach. Timeline or not. Even when there was only one signing day in February, every single year, coaching searches were happening during the season, and all of this stuff was happening because it could. It's not about the timeline. It's about greed. It's about selfishness. It's about all of the stuff that college sports is not supposed to be about. If you want proof that that went on, I can make this really simple for you. The day after the Egg Bowl in 1998, Tommy Tuberville left and went to Auburn and signed up to be their head coach. The day after, to the point where at halftime of that Egg Bowl, with the season still going on, there were graduate assistants and assistant coaches stealing stuff out of the facility so they could recruit well at their next location. It doesn't matter the timeline. It's all about greed and what can make them better. There are no guardrails. There's no way to take advantage of it for the team that is the sitting person with a coach than to sit back and absolutely take it. You can allow your season to get destroyed or not. That is where we are. If you allow your season to get destroyed, they will destroy it. And this situation exactly proves that. I'm going to tell you, this is what I think was the plan that Keith Carter figured out. Okay? This is just my opinion, but this is what I think the plan was. Lane Kiffin was going to kick the can down the road until about 4 days before the college football playoff, whenever they play Notre Dame or whoever they're going to line up against. At that point, he was going to announce that he's going to Florida or LSU or wherever he's going, and then use that playoff game to be a recruiting tool for one of Ole Miss's biggest rivals or another school in the Southeastern Conference. That other school was going to get all of the benefits based off of Ole Miss going to the college football playoff. That can't stand. That's something that can't be allowed. That's the reason that Lane Kiffin can't coach that game if he's leaving. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't think he can coach another game for Ole Miss after the Egg Bowl if there is no decision that is given to Keith Carter on Saturday. Because it's true at that point that they're just trying to kick the can down the road and make it to where, well, why not just coach the college football playoff? And then he comes out, all of the benefits go to your rivals, and you're just kind of stuck, and you miss out on some really great coaching offers, including John Sumrall. That can't be allowed to happen. And one thing that's interesting to see is whether or not there will be a decision on Saturday, because not everybody is convinced that there will actually be a decision on Saturday, because this college football playoff game means so much. Should be pretty interesting to see exactly what happens, but it kind of is what it is at this point. In our final segment, we talk leans and locks for Rivalry Week from FanDuel and what has my attention. All of that is coming up next. College football is back, and I could not be much more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there is just nothing quite like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That is why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets that are the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up the Game Time app, and in just a couple of taps, I saw some amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. I tell you, other than maybe the first weekend of the NCAA basketball tournament, this is my favorite day of the year. I like New Year's Day as well, but bowl season has kind of lost its oomph with the advent of the college football playoff. I still like rivalry week in college football whenever all of these teams are playing their cross-state rivals. It makes for exciting football. It is absolutely just my favorite time of the year. And you know what? Ole Miss kicks it off this year. 11 o'clock Friday on ABC. Ole Miss right now is a 7.5-point favorite over Mississippi State. Just win the game. You get a home playoff game, the biggest game in the history of the state of Mississippi. That is all at your fingertips. And we'll see what happens with Lane Kiffin as well. So we'll see what's going on there. Next up, you have Georgia Bulldogs, 13.5-point favorites versus Georgia Tech. Not at Georgia Tech, versus Georgia Tech. They're playing at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. That game is at 2:30 on Friday on ABC. Texas A&M is favored by 3.5 points over Texas. That is the night game on Friday. Saturday morning, you have Kentucky and Louisville. Louisville's favored by 3.5 points. They have not looked good recently. Kentucky's looked better until they got blown out by Vanderbilt, so I don't know exactly what to expect there. But Kentucky's playing for a bowl game, and in these games, there's nothing more dangerous than a 5-win team. Clemson's at South Carolina. This is a I don't care bowl game. South Carolina is favored by 2.5 points. The game's in Columbia. Clemson has 6 wins. South Carolina has 4 at this point. So South Carolina can't go to a bowl game, but Clemson's just not very good, if we're going to be honest about it. So we'll see about the Palmetto Bowl this year. Missouri's only a 2.5-point favorite on the road in Fayetteville against one of the worst football teams I've seen in the SEC in a very long time. The game's at 2:30 on the SEC Network on Saturday. It'll be really interesting to see what gets put together there. And this game is hilarious to me. Tennessee's 3.5-point favorites at home. Okay. That's basically the home field over Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt has 9 wins this year. They're 9-2. Vanderbilt winning in Tennessee would put them in line for a potential playoff berth, which means Tennessee can play spoiler against Vanderbilt for a playoff berth. It's kind of the upside down. I'm very excited about it. I need this game more than I need air. I cannot wait for that. LSU's at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's favored by 10.5 points. Is at 2:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC Saturday. Oklahoma's got a good team, and they are the shining, bright star on the resume of Ole Miss. The last 2 games, Florida and Florida State. Florida State's at Florida. Florida's a 3.5-point favorite in what I'm dubbing the Quit Bowl, if we're going to be completely honest. They're both not very good football teams, and Florida looks more like a 3-9 team than anything else, but Florida State's just not good. So we'll see how that goes. It's at 3:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN2. That's usually reserved for like Sunbelt or American football, by the way. And the last game of the weekend, Alabama's favored by 4.5 points over Auburn. The game is on ABC, 6:30 at night Central Time on Saturday. This is an important game if you look at what's going on. If you're an Ole Miss fan, I know you probably don't want to go to the SEC championship because of the playoffs. I would like to go because of what it would mean personally. If Ole Miss beats Mississippi State, Texas beats Texas A&M, and Auburn beats Alabama, Ole Miss goes to Atlanta. And we are going to do a show a little bit later on in the week about how Arch Manning and Derek Nix could finally send Ole Miss to Atlanta. So we will talk about that as the week goes on. It should be pretty interesting. I love this week. It's one of my favorite weeks in all of college football, and I hope everybody enjoys it as well. But thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in all of college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.